Okay, I think this is it, y'all. I think we are live and in action from Blairsville, Georgia, here in the studio. My name is Ben. I'm here with my dear brother and longtime friend, Andrew Williams, actually former Georgia Bulldog. That's going to be one of our topics today. So,
Go Dogs.
absolutely. Welcome in. We're just going to talk about a few things that interest us and see where this goes, because this is literally the first time we've ever done this. Kind of talk about that, what we've discussed over the years.
Yeah, it feels like we simulate this podcast every time we have a phone conversation that lasts an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided that might as well start doing this in a different format. So
Yeah.
that's really kind of what spawned it, I believe.
Absolutely. And the other day you were just like, dude, we've talked about it. Like, let's just get this done. Let's at least try it. And so that's what we're doing.
That's
Here we
exactly
are.
right. Yep.
Three things we kind of want to talk about today. Georgia Bulldogs season, coming off of a big win last weekend in Tennessee, preparing for Georgia Tech and then Alabama. We want to talk about, we went and saw Oppenheimer a couple months ago when it came out opening weekend. And then we got a couple scripture passages. As Christians, we want to discuss some things we've been thinking through biblically. So, Georgia Bulldogs.
How about them dogs, man?
That was a good, that was fun to watch.
I do want to make an observation here. My lines do not look like your lines. I don't know if that means anything.
I will, we can bring up the gain on yours, and you may even bring your mic just a little closer to you there.
How about now?
Yeah, they're starting to, you keep talking.
Let's see what it looks like now.
There you go.
Okay.
So we'll be able to match all that with compression and everything.
Cool.
So,
yeah, for sure.
but, okay, so going back to, speaking of the Georgia Bulldogs, last weekend, go up to Nolan Stadium, walk away with a 38-10 win. Thoughts?
Yeah, it was pretty awesome, of course, as a longtime Georgia fan like you and I are. Anytime you can go up to Knoxville and come out there with just any win just makes the year that much sweeter. To do it in that fashion, I keep pinching myself like, man, when is this going to stop?
Yeah.
What is this bizarro world that I'm living in where Georgia literally just dominates? And that game particularly, it always makes me nervous. And you and I talked about this a bunch because I have a memory burned into my memory banks of when I was playing for the Dogs back in the mid-2000s. I was on the 2007 team that's famous for wearing black jerseys for the first time in the history of Georgia football. And we were really good that year, really good. And we go up to Tennessee.
Who's the quarterback?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. I remember the running back. I had a concussion that game, by the way. I did. I think it was either Eric Ainge. Oh, you're talking about for us.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was Stafford. I thought you were referencing who was the quarterback for Tennessee.
Yeah.
Game.
For Georgia,
Yeah,
it was
Stafford.
07,
Yes,
you said.
07.
Yes,
So
okay.
now Sean Marino's the running back. Matthew
Yes.
Stafford's the quarterback. We have a wide receiver core led by Muhammad Massaquoi, Kenneth Harris. We have a bunch of really, really, really good players on that team.
Yeah.
And they just smoked us. I think the final score was like 35-21, but we got one of those pointless mop-up touchdowns at the end of the game. And, I mean, loudest place I had ever been to. I mean, it was intimidating. And I hate admitting that. I hate admitting that, but it was intimidating. And so I always have that in the back of my mind anytime we have to go take a road trip to Knoxville.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I mean, obviously very, very thankful and happy that we smoked them the way that we did. I would have loved to have been there for the first play of the game because that place just came unglued. I mean, I bet you that was the loudest environment that they're probably going to hear all year in that one moment.
Right. I got it. Like, I was mad when that play happened, I was mad at just how, I think, as a Georgia fan, Tennessee fans are hard to watch celebrate. I don't know why. Like, it's something about them that just drives, I think, us crazy. Again, and I'm sure they say the same thing about Georgia fans and Alabama and everybody else. Like, we've all got the fan bases that we. But I was almost not worried at all because, I mean, Georgia's been giving up touchdowns. They've been letting the other, all year, like the past 4 or 5 games. But it was just like the way they were. I mean, like you said, you could feel it through the TV how loud it was.
Yes.
So,
yes. The only thing that I would say did worry me in that moment, I was very anxious to see how our offense responded because here you are, you talk about a momentum swing. I mean, it's running off the scale. And if their defense comes out and we go 3 and out, that place is going to be absolutely bonkers.
Oh yeah.
And it's hard to douse those flames, and to come out and to go down and to at least get 3 points was big. Mm-hmm. And that's the moment, I kid you not, in my mind I was like, yeah, we just drove it down the field after that play sent this place bananas.
Yep.
I think we're going to run away with it.
Yeah, it was funny because even though we only got 3 off of that play, it still felt like we kind of had our way, driving the ball. Yep. So it was like, okay, got 3, but it was no problem getting down the field.
I believe that was the drive that Carson had the weird fumble that he lost.
Maybe.
He recovered his own fumble, but he lost 7 or 8 yards.
Yeah, something like that.
And you just kind of knew if that hadn't happened, that changes up the dynamic of that 3rd and long. And I think I'm thinking about the right series, but yeah, what a game, man. It's just like we were talking about. It's been very, very wild to be a Georgia fan the last 3 years. And going back to, what you said about Tennessee fans, you're exactly right. Every fan base has the segment of fans that is just unbearable. And what I've noticed recently with Georgia fans is, and this is true, there's a lot of bandwagoners out there.
Oh yeah.
That they don't give a rip about college football. They just they pay attention to it, but they follow whoever is the hottest commodity. All those years you had Alabama, and the Alabama fan base just seemed like it stretched from coast to coast because they were easy to cheer for because they won all the time.
Yeah.
Well, now, not that Georgia has replaced Alabama, but they're Alabama-like in the sense that they're not losing many football games.
Right.
So you're getting a lot of these bandwagoners that don't know, right? Like I was listening to 2 guys talk, and one guy asked the other guy if we were wearing white jerseys for the home game, and I'm like, this guy.
Oh wow!
What kind of question is that?
Yeah,
like, have you ever seen us wear white jerseys at home? Like, when did you start cheering for Georgia, sir?
Right.
But Tennessee has a special place in the corner of my heart that is wicked and filled with hate because of the time that I spent in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Oh yeah.
And there are 2 examples that I'm going to give you that really did happen. One, Laura's working. My wife, Laura, my better half, she's an ER doctor, and so she's got all sorts of crazy hours, as you very well know, Ben. But just for the sake of the listeners, she's working, and several of at the time she was in residency, and so several of her doctor friends in residency I would hang out with, and we would meet at the Taco Mac, and we would watch Georgia games because they were Georgia fans. Mm-hmm. And there's a gentleman that was sitting right behind, and we were in a booth at Taco Mac, and they're literally sitting in the booth that's connected to our booth. The one that just runs right up next to behind the booth that you're in.
Right.
And Tennessee was playing. They were playing in the game following the Georgia game. And Georgia was playing South Carolina, and hardcore Georgia fans are going to remember this moment. It was at South Carolina. I believe it was in the year 2013. There was like an infamous 4th down and short, and instead of running it with Todd Gurley, we tried to get fancy and do some weird little trick play, and we fumbled it. And I can't remember exactly what happened. Yeah. Either we fumbled it and they got the ball, or we fumbled it, didn't convert. Something happened. We ended up losing the game, and this Tennessee fan just was relentless. And he had picked me out, and he was just trying me. And I wanted to do something really, really bad to that gentleman, and but I didn't,
Right.
and we left. But I haven't forgotten it. The next time we were leaving Abuelo's Mexican restaurant right there in Hamilton Place Mall area. Shout out to Abuelo's. That place is absolutely fantastically delicious. And there was a mountain of a man who was probably 6'5", 6'6", 250 at least.
Mm-hmm.
A big old boy. He was in your very, very well recognized overalls that are checkered.
Yep.
Tennessee fans love to wear those. And we had just lost to Vanderbilt that day. Georgia had just lost to Vanderbilt.
Okay. Yeah.
Needless to say, the week before we had beaten Tennessee. We had just lost to Vanderbilt, and they had beaten South Carolina the same day that we had just lost to Vanderbilt. And during that year, I believe it was either 2013 or 2014. I can't remember. Whenever we played Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt and lost. That doesn't happen too often.
Right.
That'd be an easy Google search. But they had beaten South Carolina, who was ranked in the top 10 because those were the Spurrier years where he had South Carolina actually very competitive.
Right.
And it was the exact same kind of circumstance. We were walking out of the restaurant, and we were with every one of Laura's family because Blake was playing for Vanderbilt.
Oh, yeah.
So we'd all gone up there to watch the game.
Yeah.
And Blake is Laura's cousin who played football, was on full scholarship at Vanderbilt. And this mountain of a Tennessee man singles me out. You know, there's David, there's Bo, there's Justin. He doesn't bother with any of them. And I'm not little, I'm bigger than Bo, but love you, Bo. But
Yeah.
I can understand why he didn't go after Justin, but he just singled me out and just started barking in my face and hanging me birds, yelling, "Go Dogs." And I mean, I saw red, and I'm sitting there with my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and of course I didn't do anything because that guy would have worked me over 6 ways from Sunday, but I wanted to. In my heart, I did some very evil things to that man.
Sure.
So, and just Tennessee fans, I know it's a long-winded story, but they just hold a very special place in my heart as the worst fan base. Could not agree with you anymore, Ben Chapman.
Yeah. I've told you the story last year when they were doing so well. Hendon Hooker, the quarterback, they're knocking it out of the park, and they're about to play Alabama. And Anna and I, my wife, we flew up to Green Bay to catch the Packers game last season, and it was Friday, and we had a connecting flight in Minneapolis, and we're standing in line waiting to go through security in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I think I had on a Braves hat, but this dude behind me is decked out in all Tennessee gear. I mean, just head to toe, a big.
He wanted everybody to know it.
Total, and at that point, I had sort of forgotten my my disdain for Tennessee fans because I had not lived in Nashville in so long. Because I lived in Nashville, a part of Tennessee, for almost 10 years. And those fans, have their way, and you're kind of one of very few Georgia fans in that setting, and you get the whole thing. But anyway, I'd forgotten kind of their attitude, especially when they think they're back, right? The whole, and again, I'm not trying to even dog Tennessee at all. Like, it's just that's sort of the mentality. Like, we're back. Anyway. I'm standing in line in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This dude is behind me in Tennessee gear, and I turn around to him, and I just said, "Hey, man, I hope y'all take care of Bama tomorrow. As a Georgia fan, I'm rooting for you. Hope y'all get this done." He goes, "I don't know why we're gonna do the same thing to you." And I'm just like, wow, dude. Okay, fair enough.
I forgot.
Yeah,
Pardon me.
There you are. I remember now why it is. But they ended up taking care of Bama on the last kick or last play, right?
Yeah, and then they had to come down to Athens.
So they were number 1 for 4 days.
Yep.
And then they came to Athens.
That was awesome.
A beautiful, beautiful story.
Yeah, it was. Now we do know some great Tennessee people, of course.
Absolutely. My brother, best friend growing up my whole life, cousin, Chase Burrell, massive Tennessee fan, has been since like I think he can even remember. And like he's one of the most, humble dudes about it in the world. He's just like a solid fan. And so like I almost hesitate to even ever dog Tennessee that much because I know how much how passionate he is about them. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Like he's not at all like that. Where the guys that I know Tennessee's gonna win the championship this year, and then it's like, okay, dude, well y'all get a few more wins, and let's get there because it's sort of been the same thing.
Because I think there's a piece of us that can relate to that.
Sure.
I hate admitting it, but
for sure.
How many years was Georgia? It's always next year. I mean, that was the big inside joke about a Georgia fan, right? Wait till next year.
Yep.
And so I think that there's a part of us that can kind of see ourselves shamefully to admit it.
Oh yeah.
In those Tennessee fans, but it's all fun, man. That's why I love living in the South. I love SEC football. There's just a passion for it, top to bottom in the conference that I don't think exists anywhere else. Yeah, you got pockets of it in the Big Ten. You got some great schools up there that, of course, you've got very passionate fans, and but I just feel like the SEC is unique, top to bottom, in that just the passion every week. It seems like anytime SEC schools are playing, with the exception of one or two, it's a big game.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the stadiums are big, and the stadiums are loud.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear it referred to as a religion a lot, and I don't like that, but it somewhat is to a certain degree. Yeah. But I don't know.
For sure.
Getting back to the actual game, I thought the boys they were surgical, man. Mm-hmm. Mike Bobo called an unbelievable game. You did not know where the ball was going to be distributed.
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell Tennessee had no clue where it was going.
Right.
They shut their run down pretty good. I felt like Tennessee did. They did shut the run down. I mean, the second half we just sort of we were throwing those body blows, and eventually Milton kind of broke through for a couple of decent, 10, 12-yard gains here and there, and had that touchdown, I think it was the late third quarter, and then they just kind of shut it down in the fourth quarter. I loved seeing that stadium empty.
Oh yeah.
And just how we looked. I mean, we just looked like the number one team in the country.
Yeah, for
sure.
It
really, I walked away from that game, Ben, thinking we really might win a third national championship. Now, I don't want to jump all the way there, but I don't know. I think just this year we haven't looked as dominant for whatever the reasons are. I just haven't. That feeling hasn't really gripped me.
Yeah.
But after that beatdown that we gave Tennessee, a decent Tennessee team in Knoxville, I came away from, like, if we handle business versus Georgia Tech, and if we can beat Alabama, I just don't see us losing another game. And the Georgia Tech game, those boys are going to be ready to play. Exactly. I think people think that that's just going to be a walk in the park, but they hate us.
Yeah.
And it's at their place. It's at night.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a new coach. I mean,
just
I guess
throw the bag at you. I mean, everything.
He's in year 2. We've got, I think Kirby's got a lot of respect for, what their program is trying to do, how they've sort of turned over the personnel. They've transitioned from that hocus pocus option nonsense. Now they're running, your more multiple pro formations, and it's more of a traditional looking offense. It's going to take them some time, obviously, to get the right players. But back when I played, man, the Georgia Tech games were tough.
Yeah.
They were recruiting at a high level. For goodness sakes, Megatron was a Georgia Tech wide receiver.
Yeah.
Calvin Johnson.
Yeah.
And they had some players, man.
Yeah.
And we won most of those games. And I think my second senior year, as I like to say, I had a medical red shirt. So I was the original super senior before all the COVID, super seniors. I had that 6 year of eligibility. And it was in 2008 they came to Athens, and we were beating them the doors off of them first half, and they came back and they beat us, man. Jonathan Dwyer ran all over us. So I always have respect for Tech. They are growing up a Georgia fan in the 90s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a
it's a rivalry.
Big rivalry.
Yeah.
My hope is that this team gets up enough for them to go and just take care of business like they should, And I think Kirby will have them there, but I think that's what we saw at the beginning of the year was some struggles to get up for these, what they may not be like marquee matchups, right? But I think they're going to come ready to play, and I think hopefully Georgia is too, But,
I think so. They got a lot to play for. So,
yeah, I mean, absolutely.
I think they'll be
and
up.
that's the other thing. There was a corner that was turned, it seemed like, this season. Maybe the Kentucky game. There was a game, it feels like, where everything from that game, Georgia has only looked better each week. You know what I'm saying? Was it the Kentucky where we really put it on them?
Yep.
Maybe you could even make a case for the second half of the South Carolina game when Beck started to get a little bit of confidence. It seemed like they were like, look, dude, you're our guy. We need you to throw it down the field and be confident about it. And he started to do that. You've seen that, and then he's gotten better. And again, when we really took care of Kentucky the way we did, it seemed like every game since has been a building block to get better and better, and that's why it doesn't seem like it's been as much of a roller coaster this year. It was like a really slow start, and it was like, dude, what is going on?
Yep.
And then we started getting us into some real SEC opponents, and then you're seeing these big jumps, like a graph almost.
For sure, yeah.
And so now it's like, instead of last year, it would be like you dominate Oregon, and then you come in and struggle against Kent State or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then it was like this roller coaster, But hopefully we're keeping that trajectory, get to Alabama, and we just keep rolling. So who knows? But
that's a really good analogy. I haven't really thought of it like that. Comparing last season, we were kind of up and down, and sort of the message from the media was whenever Georgia feels like it, whenever they want to get up, this is what they do.
Yeah, yeah.
But you're right. This year it seems like more of a crescendo where we've had just young guys playing or guys in first-time starting positions, and they are developing, and we're getting young guys reps, and they're learning a very, very similar offensive scheme, but maybe there's some slight changes to the lingo. Who knows? But definitely a different offensive coordinator. Some new guys on defense that just had to sort of get some playing time under their belt, get some some development done. But it always comes down to Alabama, it seems like, right?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And I don't know, me and you seem to maybe have a different take on the Alabama Crimson Tide, right? Like I feel like I have still sort of conceded, and I hate admitting this, but I don't think you agree with it. But I mean, I'd love for you to obviously weigh in and react to this, but I feel like they're still our daddy.
Oh man,
and I hate saying
that.
it.
But
I hate saying it, but dude, they've owned our butt, bro.
Yeah,
we got one game, and it was a big one.
Yeah.
And it mattered, and it knocked the ceiling off that knocked the lid off the program, as Coach Rick used to always say. And that was big, and maybe that's the monkey that we got off our back. But until we beat them consistently,
right,
they are our daddy.
Yeah,
they got us in 17, they got us in 18, they got us in 20. They even got us in 21.
Which, that man, I that really, really was upsetting.
I know.
All of them have been, but dude, that 21 one, man, that almost still am down about that game, dude. Even though we got our redemption, because I know I've listened to plenty of Alabama fans talk about it, and it's like with the whole Jameson, who went down?
Yeah.
When he goes down in the championship game, that's when that's their big excuse, right? Well, he got hurt. If he doesn't get hurt, it's a different game. Well, maybe, right? I mean, there's a good chance.
Yep.
But their ammo is, look what we did with him in the game 3-4 weeks prior. You know, it's like, yeah, we would have beat. And so it still doesn't feel like that's what I think aggravates me about with Alabama fans, especially. It's like they still haven't really given us our flowers for beating them, because it's like, yeah, well, you did it because one of our best guys was hurt.
Yeah.
You know? And I get that. I totally get it. But so yeah, I'm gun shy bad.
Yeah.
You know, if we run when we do run into them in 2 weeks, a week, whenever, it's like, I never want to feel that way again, dude.
It's that type of reasoning is tough, because let's face it, there's some truth to it. Okay, when somebody loses a key playmaker, that has an impact on the outcome of the football game.
Right.
However, I feel like during the course of the season, teams consistently lose playmakers.
Absolutely.
And
it's football, right? I mean,
I mean, I can think of in 2021. Hey, let's face it, but JT Daniels wasn't playing because now Stet had earned the spot toward the end of the season.
Yeah.
But I mean, JT Daniels was our dude. He was the big name with all the stars, the high-profile transfer, and we saw him in action a couple of games before he got hurt. He hurt his oblique and just couldn't seem to get that thing right. But Stetson, of course, you can't take anything away from the GOAT, bro. I mean, anybody who cheers for Georgia has got to have that guy just immortalized, and you know, he's got a statue outside the stadium waiting on him one of these days, I hope. So I love Stetson Bennett. I love him. So any of this is not to take anything away from him. It's just he wasn't the starter.
Right.
You know what I mean? At the beginning of the season.
Yep.
And in 2017, I mean, Jake Fromm was not the starter at the beginning of the season.
Right.
Now these guys earned the spot, but the 5-star gunslingers were our starters who just happened to get hurt and then couldn't develop those seasons. And so we could kind of use those same excuses as well. I believe you could make an argument for it.
Even in that game, we had tons of starters that were hurt on both sides of the ball.
Yep.
As again, like at that point in the season, as everyone is going to. That's what I think is aggravating. I think for Georgia fans is because we're like, dude, I thought y'all were next man up university. You know what I mean? I thought y'all were the ones that had 5 stars backing up 5 stars, like layered like you had. And so I don't know. But anyway, that's all.
How do you feel about it, honestly?
This coming up.
I know we're not supposed to talk about the game after the game, but that's the one that matters in terms of, I mean, if we lose to Georgia Tech but somehow beat Alabama and we're a 1-loss SEC champion, I think we get in, or we have I think some teams would have to lose. I think you'd have to have I think you'd have to have Oregon beat Washington. I think you would have to probably have Florida beat Florida State or Louisville beat Florida State.
Yeah.
But those are both very, very realistic outcomes. Mm-hmm. I think my point is, if Georgia were to lose to Georgia Tech and then beat Alabama in the SEC championship, the likelihood that they would get in is higher than if they have the inverse of that happen, where they beat Georgia Tech and then lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game.
There is a scenario where if we lose the SEC championship, we're out. Georgia's out, you know. But
which would be very Atlanta Braves-ish.
Yeah.
I sure hope that doesn't happen. I get nervous before we play Alabama just because of all the scar tissue that exists from 2012, 2017,
for sure,
2018.
I think that, like you're asking, like feeling about this is probably it's the most, I don't want to say confident, because I think in the 21 game, well, you and I talked about it before. I remember you kind of got me.
I thought we were going to roll
jacked and tan about it. Yeah,
I thought we were going to roll them. I genuinely felt like we were going to roll them, and I walked out of that stadium with my tail so far between my legs. I was just like, "What were you thinking? Like, this is what you get."
Exactly. So I I guess this is the least like nervous or worried I've been about facing them. The whole thing is obviously it's cliche as it gets, but like if Georgia just goes in and does what they're capable of doing, I could see Georgia winning by 14 points.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
like handle them, be it a good game, and then just keep leaning on them and just
Yep.
keep leaning on them.
Go even with the turnover margin.
Yeah.
Go even. If we go
Absolutely.
even, I like us by 2 possessions for sure. Whether
Yeah.
that's 10 or 14, I like us by 2.
Something like a 38-20 or 30s 20s area,
Yeah.
38-21, something like that. I don't know. But
Yeah. That'd be great. Would love that.
yeah. It's just a matter of the thing that's crazy though is like it does feel like as long as Carson's on that we're going to be okay because Bowers can have a bad game if that's possible, and he's got 17 other weapons to go to. You know what
Seems
I'm saying?
that way, yeah.
Who was it? I was listening. Somebody on ESPN. The dude that used to be Greg McElroy.
Yeah, McElroy.
McElroy.
Yeah.
Wow. He was talking about how like a lot of teams, if you can make them one dimensional, you can beat them. But Georgia's like one of these teams that just isn't that way. Like
Yeah.
if you take away their run game, they can't. It's like no, dude. You can take away that, and they've got way more. They just got so many ways of beating you. You know. So
It's so funny. I think last thing that I'll say, and then of course we can still talk about this if you want to, or we can move on to the next segment.
Yeah.
But watching that Tennessee game, watching our receivers, Rah and Dom, and dadgum Dylan Bell, dude, what a dog, bro. That dude is a dog.
heck of a game.
I felt like this is the way those dominant Alabama teams used to look.
Yeah.
And,
Just everywhere.
And they still got a squad, bro. They still got, I mean, you talk about the three-headed monster receiver that they have with Benton, Burton, and Bond.
Mm-hmm.
Those boys can get open. Milroe, all he's done is develop and get better.
Yeah.
He's tough. He took some shots in that Kentucky game, and he got his rear end back up and got out there. And I don't know, he won a lot of respect over from me watching that game. And I mean, those boys, they're going to play.
Yeah.
They got dudes.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can come in and just be methodical.
Right.
Just not get too emotional and just start throwing those body blows that we do.
A lot of people are saying basically it's the national championship. Like you're seeing the best two.
I think so. I mean, you could make an argument for Michigan maybe is on up there, but the road always goes through Alabama.
Yeah.
And last year
that's
was
true.
just one of those weird years that LSU snuck in there and then got
I think as long as
roasted.
Saban's there, that's it.
yeah.
I mean, it always goes through them, at least for now.
Yep.
Now, if we go on to Georgia goes on 3-peats, you start to maybe the tide does actually begin to go. Okay, they handled Bama again. That's 2. The last 2 meetings, and especially if there's a way of doing it in a pretty dominating fashion. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, yeah, we'll see. So. Shifting gears a little bit, and we don't have to spend that long on this topic, but I just wanted to kind of just get your thoughts on leaving the theater after. We drove down to Atlanta, or where were we? Atlanta?
Yeah, it was Atlanta.
Yeah, North Atlanta.
Well,
the malls.
We're in Blairsville, so anytime we get off that mountain, hit 400 is Atlanta.
Yeah, exactly. So I know we took a 2-hour trip south to watch a movie, me, Anna, and you, and IMAX opening night Oppenheimer. You and I, obviously Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan's my favorite filmmaker. Him and Wes Anderson for the most part. Anyway, we were highly anticipating it and talked about it for as long as we knew about it. So 6 months to a year leading up to it. Very excited about what was in store. We know Nolan likes to deal in time in his films, which I love. I love that concept. I love that's kind of his trademark in a film, is that he's always going to be playing with time and how we live and react within it. So, what were your thoughts on Oppenheimer?
I mean, I was obviously blown away by his ability to tell a story. I didn't know a whole lot about Oppenheimer
Yeah.
before I learned that Christopher Nolan was writing and directing a movie about him. Cillian Murphy was unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't have the credentials to back this statement up, but I mean, I feel like it was Oscar worthy,
Right.
his performance.
Sure.
And I'm like you. I mean, Nolan is my favorite director
Yeah.
of all time. I mean, I'm not that old. I don't have too large of a sample size, but all of his stories are so unique. He always, you're exactly right, has some sort of time element in it. They make you think very, very deeply. They make you rewatch them to see what you missed the first time through.
Absolutely.
And I mean, the whole way home, I was trying to figure out, all right, what did I miss? Like, what did I not catch? Like it was a little, I felt like, where you had Lewis Strauss, was that Downey Jr.'s character?
I think that was yeah.
Just the way that it was so petty, the reasons behind this, this security. What would you even call it? Like he wasn't under trial for anything, but it was like some sort of security type,
like a security clearance, right?
yeah, security clearance meeting or whatever, where he was getting a security clearance revoked, and
Right, yeah.
and just the intensity that you just felt. I mean, obviously the visual effects for Nolan are amazing. He hates CGI, and he loves IMAX.
Oh yeah.
And I think that this was the first film that had ever filmed an IMAX video in black and white, right?
I think so.
And so that dynamic was really cool. But then I don't know, man. I don't know. I really am interested in your thoughts here, because I also felt the weight of, I mean, Cillian Murphy did such a good job of just letting you feel that weight of, what did I just do? What did we just do?
Yeah.
What did we just introduce to the world with, this new technology of splitting atoms and then weaponizing it? And it was almost like the lesser of two evils. It was either we were going to do it or the Nazis were going to do it.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that it's not them.
Yeah.
And because they'd already proven that they didn't have a problem with genocide. And so, I mean, you could make an argument that God knew it was going to be done, and he sort of steered the lesser of two evils into being the one that won the race. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I just felt like there was a lot of weight that you felt just on Cillian's performance, about how, like, what did we just do? And, the whole dynamic with him and Einstein was really neat. I didn't know a lot of that.
No, me either.
I didn't even realize I'm showing my stupidity here, but I didn't even realize Albert Einstein was even alive then. You know what I'm saying? I was like, what? Like, I'm trying to read things before we went and watched the movie, and I think you may even have told me, like, I think Einstein's in it. And I was like, huh?
Yeah.
I thought he died like in 1776 when they were signing the Declaration of Independence. I didn't know.
I actually thought Einstein, I guess my whole life, I just thought it was, honestly, I probably thought Einstein was more like the Oppenheimer character in the development of the bomb. I always thought he had way more of a role in it. And again, just proving my ignorance to the whole situation. So Oppenheimer coming along, and especially this story digging into it. One thing too that you talk about the weight, like I didn't consider just how, like, that guilt,
Yeah.
knowing that you most definitely had something to do with the death of so many like civilians, women and children and families and homes and all the, like just the destruction of a two massive major cities,
Yeah.
And so just feeling that guilt, even though, you're convinced that, hey, it's going to save the lives of a lot of Americans, still, no matter what, when you something that devastating, it's just going to be. So when you walk out of the theater, it really did feel like, especially in IMAX, it was more of, this was like a different way of watching a movie. It was like more of an experience. It feels like you're experiencing a story, almost sitting in a room watching. And because like when you left the theater, it wasn't like, wow, that was a good movie I just
Right.
saw. It was just kind of like, I don't feel like talking for a little while.
I know, that's exactly.
I
That's
just
a really
want to
good.
like,
It's really well put.
gosh, man, like heavy.
It was heavy.
Yeah. So
It was heavy, and another thing I love about Nolan is he's obviously a genius, at least totally in his craft. But I think he's probably next level intelligence just with how he taps into the science.
oh yeah, yeah.
I mean,
so many of his films he's done that with.
I know.
For sure.
And definitely Interstellar.
Yeah.
I think he partnered with a physicist. I don't remember the gentleman's name, but for a lot of the artistic design of what the black hole looks like, and but I think that there was a lot of that. Just, I mean, you're creating a mini sun with a nuclear explosion, right? It's was it fusion? Fission? I don't know. I don't know the difference between the two, but it looks like a sun.
Yeah.
You're creating, it's hot as hot as the sun.
Yeah.
And it's temporary, but when they're showing like the sparks, and it's just, I loved seeing, the things flying around, and the sound in an IMAX
Oh yeah.
is always, especially when you film on those IMAX cameras, the sound, I just remember that was very memorable for me. But you know what, Ben, is probably the most memorable thing out of that entire experience? It was before the movie ever started. We were watching the previews. Dude, it was that dadgum Exorcist sequel. Like, I mean, these two little possessed girls, like, I mean, dude, I was like, bro, the whole theater
showing this.
The whole theater was
My goodness.
was just ducking their heads and closing their eyes and laughing because of how freaky it was.
On an IMAX screen.
Yeah. I mean, I was just like, no thanks.
When the bomb went off, so I've only seen it the once in the theaters. And like you said, with most Nolan films, you have to see them at least twice. If it's Tenet, you got to see it like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
But when that bomb went off, dude, and it was like almost a minute of just silence. Her breathing, it was like his breathing.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, he's not gonna put the sound in there of the bomb. I guess it's just, I was just thinking through, like, maybe it's just, he's just like, no, man, we're not going to even try to emulate that. And all of a sudden, dude, oh my gosh, those speakers, it felt like they were going to come off the wall.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, I jumped so hard. Anna looked at me like,
I've forgotten about that.
She's like, are you okay? Like, I mean, it scared me to death, dude, because I just totally put it out like, oh, he's just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's like a minute from the explosion later, all of a sudden, it's like, golly, and you felt it in your chest.
Yeah.
But, man.
What a film. It's a very long film. It's going to be one of those that, man, you got to commit. If you're going to watch that thing 2 and 3 times over, you got to commit to, an entire evening of blocking off everything else to get through it. But I'm like you. I've only seen it once. I'm looking forward to it coming out. I think it's available for purchase on Amazon Prime. I'll probably buy it.
Yeah.
I usually buy his films just to have them to watch when I'm bored. If I'm not watching Georgia highlights, just smoking Tennessee, I might turn on some Oppenheimer.
So, something I've as I'm kind of getting back into film and creating documentaries, and I've got a few ideas that I'd love to, we've talked about pursue. Something I've heard a lot of people talk about lately is, or I've read, is getting the DVDs and Blu-ray, or getting it on Blu-ray. And like one thing you can learn so much is by watching the film with commentary, and like studying the way that they listen to the way the director explains how they did these scenes or what they were doing or why they did this shot or whatever. And I've never thought of it in that way. You know what I'm saying? To study a film like that. So I thought about, like, if I do get it, I may actually purchase it on where I can listen to Nolan's commentary on it.
Oh, that'd be,
because I think I've got all of his on Blu-ray of some sort. So
yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, why have I never purchased one with his commentary? That's a very, very good point.
Because they all come with it. Like
Right.
if you buy it it's going to have that director's commentary.
Yeah, I've seen something like that with Interstellar. I don't know if it was necessarily. It would have to be some sort of commentary. He was explaining, the things about how do you show a black hole in, 3-dimensional space, and it's going to look like an hourglass. I remember thinking, like, I've never thought of that before.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Insane.
that would be something fun to do. That'd be a really good way to rewatch it with commentary.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Ben.
We'll note, and one thing I think we try to think about, and it's kind of not a popular take, but like one note is there is some nudity in it.
Yeah.
So for Christians, the Christian watcher, I think there are a couple of scenes, actually 2 scenes. IMDb is a kind of a tool I use a lot before watching a film, check out IMDb, and it kind of gives you it tells you where, like, if nudity is in a film and what kind, it'll sort of tell you the scene. And there's been plenty of films that I've watched where, like, oh, this is that, I know what's coming. So even in Oppenheimer, I read up on kind of what it was to where, and again, that's not a very popular take, but like, close your eyes,
Yeah.
dude. I don't need to see that. I'm at the point in my life and my walk that's not helpful. You know what I'm saying? It's sinful, and I don't want to see that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just the way I looked at it. But
No, I think it's cool that you can do that now.
yeah,
You
yeah,
do a little
for
research
sure.
beforehand and know when it's coming and be prepared for it.
Yeah,
It was weird. That was the one part that seemed a little bit unlike Nolan.
yeah,
I haven't read. I will tell you, I usually read. I like to, with his films in particular, I like to try to figure it out on my own.
right.
It's just fun.
Yeah,
It took
yeah.
me, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 times through Inception before I figured it out.
Yeah,
And I think I figured it out. But and then I'll read to try to see if there's
yeah,
some correlation with what others have kind of gotten from it as well. But I haven't done that yet with Oppenheimer because I don't know. Like I said, I think it's just come out for purchase.
yeah.
And
I think this week.
you had to make a commitment to go. I mean, I don't think the Blairsville, the Hiwassee theaters were even showing it. I don't remember.
Yeah, they
but
did for a
they
little
did?
while.
Okay.
But
Well,
it definitely wasn't obviously IMAX. But
yeah, but I wondered kind of what was the purpose of it? I didn't really get it. I didn't really get it just kind of seemed a little bit forced. I don't know.
the first one was totally could have done, like, because it's the I can't remember her name now. Kitty is his wife. The other girl that he.
Yeah, she was
If
a
you
communist.
read in
she
the
was
book-
a communist sympathizer. I just don't remember
Yes.
her character's name.
Yeah, she's extremely
Yeah.
and so they were engaged at one point. And the
Very
first,
pretty lady. Don't need to be seeing that. Very
right,
pretty lady.
Exactly. So the first scene, I feel like it could have been. Well, and like you said, Nolan, I think that was his first R-rated film since Insomnia, which was, oh my goodness,
Al Pacino.
yes,
Back in the day.
Robin Williams,
Yeah.
and so
Yes, and then Memento before Insomnia was R, and then I think he had like a short film.
it was just a super low budget.
Yeah, or
Following?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, The Following.
Yeah, following. It was like
That was
have
an
you seen-
R.
You seen that one?
I have never seen Following.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Anna and I went through before Tenet came out. We went and watched all Christopher Nolan films leading up to it, rewatched them or whatever, and that was the first time I'd seen it. It's a very, I would almost like to see him go back to that and redo the movie with a little bit more of a budget, because it's a really good story. It's just, but anyway, yeah. So from Insomnia, which I think was like early 2000s, maybe even late 90s.
Yeah.
It was like all PG-13, and he stayed away even almost from like language and stuff. There wasn't a lot of language in his, and so it was kind of, this movie came out and it was a little different, but yeah, I think let your conscience be the guide in that, and there's liberty in making those decisions. But
well, it wasn't a sexual nudity. I mean, it was, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it was like post or pre, but it wasn't like they weren't trying to capture it in the act. Do I remember that correctly?
The first one, I think they are. Because remember, she's like, they're like in the middle, and she's like quizzing. She's like,
there's that scene when he's getting interrogated and Emily Blunt's in there. That was the one that I was kind of like, what in the heck? That's weird.
And it's like they're trying to show you how bad that would have affected Kitty. It was almost more about her, his wife, because she's having to go sit through.
That one was so unexpected.
Because in the book you read, he actually, it was decently well known that he visited with her and was having an ongoing relation with her, even in marriage.
Yeah.
So that, I think that was portraying how weighty it was, how hard it was for Kitty to sit through hearing them.
Yeah, I think for
but could it have been done without nudity?
Yes, my opinion is that it's so easy to do that nowadays.
Yeah, exactly.
Every original series show, it's like softcore porn anymore.
Right.
And it's just like it's so easy to do that. It's just like it's more difficult to make a really good movie that they don't. To me, it's more difficult to make it to where they don't have bad language,
which is one of the reasons that Nolan is my favorite filmmaker, because I feel like he's done so many amazing, I mean, some of the greatest ever.
Yeah, for sure.
Without having to go, it's kind of like a clean comic,
right?
You know, like a Nate Bargatze or one of them that to me shows you the genius of the comic. They don't have to go to the easy cotton candy stuff. Yeah, it's easy to go out there and talk extremely vulgar to a lost world, and they're just going to crack. I mean, even Christians, I guess, in some ways. I know I've been there for sure, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
I didn't mean to sound like, you know what I mean.
We're not trying to sound like prudes. If you know, if you knew us 10 years ago, you would know why we're saying this.
Exactly. Lord knows that.
Me and Ben used to have some good times. Let's just put it that way. Good times is in the way that the world defines the times.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
So we've got some experience to justify our opinion with that. So,
and like at this point in our lives, I think we want to stay as far away from that as we can. You know what I mean? And still function, and because we love culture, obviously we love sports, we love movies, music. Super passionate about all those things, but how far in we let them or whatever. Again, I think a lot of it comes down to a matter of conscience and liberty, and we look at Scripture for that. So, speaking of,
well, hang on, before we go there, if you had to give it a grade,
Oppenheimer,
like do two things for me. Rank it, if you can, on your list of Nolan films, where it would fall for you. And you don't have to give me like a number, just, top, middle, bottom, whatever. You can give me a number if you want to go that far. Yeah. And then rate the movie using a scale of 5 stars, with 5 being the best, 0 being the worst.
Man, I do think I need to see it again, because like we said, it's almost like you hadn't even really seen it until you've seen it twice when it comes to Nolan. So I do need to see it again. But I would say right now it sits somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
Of his, because again, it wasn't like at the end of Inception or The Dark Knight or Dark Knight Rises or whatever, where you're like, that was an amazing movie. Yeah, it was a great, but goodness grief, it was so heavy.
Yeah.
Because it's so realistic. You know what I'm saying?
It could be an unfair sort of thing to ask, just because it's a different. It's kind of like Dunkirk.
Yeah,
That wasn't an edge on your seat. I mean, it sort of was, but like, I didn't get it until I watched it for the third time. Then I realized, oh, there's a time element here. Duh.
Exactly.
Took me 3 times to watch it to get what was going on with the not joking. Yeah. And then once it clicked, I was like, that is so cool. And it instantly went from the bottom of the heap to the top of the heap for me.
Yeah. Saw Interstellar in IMAX opening night. And I was like, yeah, that was pretty cool. I mean, man, it was confusing, but it was a cool. And then Anna and I went on a date back when we were still dating, and just saw it in a regular theater. And dude, I could not believe how amazing that was. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my gosh, that is one of my favorite movies ever. You know what I mean? So totally, it's just amazing how his movies do that. Like how they can make that leap, like you said, when something clicks. That's one thing I do love. I know we're giving Nolan his flowers here, but he respects his audience in such a way. He leaves so much for you to kind of figure out on your own. He doesn't spell everything out just perfectly. Yeah. And so in a way, he respects you in that. I don't know. It's just like that's what makes you end up. He don't mind if you walk away the first time like a little confused.
That's right.
And
that's got to be hard to do. I don't know. I imagine that would be kind of hard to do.
Yeah. How do you tap into that?
I know. Because Tenet, I've watched it 4 times. I still don't. I know I'm missing something. I still don't get it yet. And I still haven't read about it because I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw some hilarious drawing of like somebody's portrayal of what all was going on. I didn't even want to look at that. But I mean, the drawing looked like a Picasso painting. I was like, what in the world is going on here? Yeah. But that's another one that's just, what a concept. Like, how do you, what is up with your brain that allows you not only to come up with those ideas, but to be able to visualize, put a visual portrayal behind them.
Right.
Like, bro, that is just, I mean, I can talk about some crazy stuff, but if I tried to create it somehow so that somebody could see what I'm talking about, I just don't have that skill set.
And not only that, but not use CGI the way that he does. The dude is he's literally a genius, a filmmaking genius.
He is a genius, man.
I remember that movie came out in, I don't know, you'd say the height of COVID, but remember it was like a big controversial thing that it was going to the theaters. And because COVID was full on.
I remember.
So this was late 2020.
Yeah.
And I actually drove to LJ from here to see it. So, because I had to see it in theaters, and Anna stayed back, so I went by myself. One of my favorite things in the world to do is go to the movies by myself.
Me too, man. It's
and
funny.
I was the only person sitting in this movie. Actually, Georgia was playing Tennessee that day, and so I caught like the 1:00 matinee or whatever. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like a solid hour and a half into this movie. Looking around,
and this is
Tenet.
Tenet?
Tenet.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love most of the. I have no idea what's happening. I'm like, I literally do not know what the story is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm looking around like,
yeah.
I wish someone could somewhat like catch me up, because maybe I wasn't paying attention at a part. Like, I don't know what he's about. Like, what are we doing? And so as soon as it came out, I bought it. Me and Anna watched it one night, and she actually is really good at that. Anna is really good at picking up on movies. Like,
She's smart.
She is. She can like figure things out almost before the end of the movie. So she kind of like, I think, we talked through it. Well, then the very next night, Chase Burrell and his wife Courtney came over to our house, and we watched it again like 2 nights in a row. And that was my third time seeing it. I was like, I think I've got
Yep.
it, dude. I think I figured it out. Anyway.
Yeah, it took me, I think, same exact description.
Yeah.
For me, first time through, I was just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Now, I will go pretty quickly, and unlike you, I need to start doing what you said, like figuring it out more on my own.
I like the challenge of it.
Yeah. See, I'm just like, dude, somebody explain this to me so I can then go and really enjoy it.
It's like in football when you're watching film and you pick up on the tendency. You're like, I got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know when the QB is going to throw it long. I know he's got a little hitch.
Yeah.
He's got a little something that he does. It's kind of like that where you go back and you rewatch it and you're able to focus differently because you're not as worried about taking all of the plot in.
Right.
Like you know what happens with the plot, but you don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think I'm so quick because I just want to.
You want to get through the plot.
I want to know the plot. I watch it for the plot, and then if I don't understand it, I just want to go. Somebody explain it to me now that I can go back and like get it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe maybe that's lazy. I don't know.
When I figured out, Inception, I think I cheered almost like Georgia, like I would when Georgia wins a big football game. Like I was so excited because I was like, it took me, and I don't want to like spoil it. If you haven't watched Inception, all 0 of our listeners out there, but I'm not gonna spoil it. But it just has. I'll just put it this way: it has something to do with the totem.
Yep.
Okay. When I figured it out, it was almost like I had figured out. I don't know, like a secret that nobody else knew.
Yeah.
And I immediately got on my phone to see if this was a thing, and then it was quickly confirmed, at least by opinions of others.
Oh yeah.
Because he'll never come out and say it, and that's what I love about him. But
I've heard him say like I want to. There's a lot of things I just want to leave up
to you guys.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I remember a lot of people had that same thought at the end of Dark Knight Rises, where I'm sorry for the 0 listeners, I'm just gonna say it. when Bruce sees Alfred at the end, people have argued, is that just a figment of his own imagination, or is that real? And I mean, I totally think it's real.
Yeah,
I think he was there because he's with what's her name, Catwoman.
Yeah.
Dude, I saw a little meme of that today. Somebody used it as a meme. And that look that those two give each other, just about like it is. That is awesome.
Yeah, dude. I know.
I freaking loved it.
Now, Michael Caine.
That may have been the most satisfied I've ever been. Me and my
you
cousins.
are a Batman fanatic,
right?
So that has to be absolutely a dream come true for the best director in modern history to take and adapt that film in a way that it's like, dude, that could happen.
Yeah, the whole universe secret. Yeah, the Batman.
Elon Musk could literally be driving around in a black tank, beating crap out of people.
Yeah,
that's something that really could happen.
It's so brilliant. It's so awesome.
I mean, I don't know if it could. I'm just saying you feel like it.
Yeah,
could
exactly.
With his
it's
portrayal.
all very That's awesome.
So,
with that said, we were talking a little bit about some scripture we've been going through, and you'd mentioned something this morning. Talk to us about Exodus.
Yeah, so I like to read through the Bible cover to cover, and I supplement that with like different things that we're focused on, either Bible study at church or small group or whatever. And I'm in Exodus now, and as you very well know, Ben, I love the weird things in the Bible. It's my opinion that, Christians believe that a supreme being spoke all of this into existence. And to take it a step further, we are literally walking around on a giant rock that has water on it, that is protected by an invisible magnetic force field and has, the perfect blend of gases trapped within its atmosphere so that our bodies can breathe, and it's heated perfectly by a gigantic ball of fusion in a free fall vacuum. And so when that's your baseline, a lot of these things in the Bible, they don't come across as that weird. Like it's weird in the terms of like thinking about everyday mundane life.
Sure.
But I don't know. I like to ponder these things.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes it's a frustrating endeavor for mature Christians who are rightfully so, occupied by more relevant things. Seeding the kingdom, creating disciples. I understand that those are at the top of the shelf, right?
Yeah.
My opinion is we all have forms of entertainment, and this is a form of entertainment for me that just so happens to be something that I believe is real and true.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with it being open-ended a lot of times, and I like to ponder it. I think it's a form of worship.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my segue, or my predisposition of the topic of just when God shows up. It's like the first time in the Bible where we see God really. I mean, I know that we see God show up to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, who becomes Israel, but it's the first time he reveals himself as I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time he gives himself a name, a label, and is literally intervening directly with sort of the inner workings of man, in terms of, hey, you go here and you do this and you say this to this person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in chapter 7, and I think it's pretty funny that, Moses is a G, bro. He's like arguing with God. He's like, I'm not going.
Yeah.
I'm not going. Can you send somebody else? Like, I can't. And God's getting frustrated with him, which I just kind of think is a really interesting. You could dive into that, and I'm sure you could probably create several sermons about what that really means and symbolism of God and his people and blah, blah, blah. But I'm at the part now where Moses is yielded. He said, fine, as long as you bring my brother with me, because he's essentially more articulate than I am. And of course, I'm paraphrasing, but so they're encountering Pharaoh, who is the king of Egypt, and Egypt at the time was sort of the global power. And when I say global, I don't mean over the whole earth. I just mean at the time, the creation was sort of the cradle of civilization, was right there, and call it Middle Earth, right? Middle East.
There you go. Yeah.
And I don't know. I was reading today about God. Moses was concerned that the people would not believe him. So God goes and approaches Moses. You're going to deliver my people. Moses is 80 years old. He's an old man.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, what? Like, okay, how am I going to convince the people? Who am I going to tell them sent me? God gives him a name. It's literally Yahweh, or you could pronounce it Yahweh, but whatever. That's what the name he gives himself. Mm-hmm. And he also says, well, I'm going to allow you to do some signs to further sort of drive home the point that I sent you. And so he ends up somehow giving him some staff that's able to turn into what appears to be a serpent. And I think as Christians, most of us are familiar with this part of the story. The thing that I caught this morning that I'd never really thought about was the ability of Pharaoh's magicians and sorcerers, or whatever version of the Bible you're reading, whatever it refers to Pharaoh's weird people as, but they were able to replicate the signs. So Moses obeys God, goes tells the people, tells Pharaoh. Pharaoh's like, I'm not going to let him go. And he throws the staff down, turns into a snake.
They throw theirs.
Pharaoh's magicians, he calls his magicians and wise ones. They come in, throw theirs, and they're able to sort of match it. And then Moses turns all the waters in the Nile and in Egypt to blood, literally to blood. And Pharaoh goes and gets his magicians and sorcerers or whatever they're called, and they're able to replicate it. Mm-hmm. And that just got me thinking. It's like, all right, either this literally happened, okay, either these events literally happened, or they're just completely symbolic for something. I thought through both of those, and I felt like it made a little bit more sense for them to literally happen, all right? And so then it just, I got to the point where it's like, okay, well then what is that? What in the world is that? Is it magic? Or is it some kind of high technology, science-based something going on there? Because my sort of inkling is that it's the latter. And the more that we develop as human beings, and the more that we develop our ability to produce technology, the more magic becomes scientific. You know, and I think what me and you always talk about, a very commonly used analogy that you and I throw across the bow to each other is, you know, the iPhone. If you take that back to even like 1980, and you were to show that to somebody and show them how you could pull a song out of thin air onto it and then play the song through it without any kind of tape or speaker, it would come across as magic.
Yeah.
But you and I would know it was technology.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like, how were pharaohs like, okay, all right, I can accept that like God gives them a staff and Moses' staff is able to do some really cool things because God gave it to him. But explain to me how Pharaoh's people are able to match the weirdness.
So yeah, like the fact that his becomes a snake, theirs becomes snakes, right?
Yeah.
And his eats theirs.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? Like what happened?
Yeah.
I think I've just always taken it like they were magicians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they did magic. I don't know.
But do you know of anybody that can really do magic beside Nate Bargatze's dad?
There are, well, you know, so
I've seen some videos of David Blaine doing some really weird stuff.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
But I think that it's, and I'm sorry I just hit the microphone. I hope it doesn't do a big bang.
It's all good.
But I hear what you're saying.
The
and
illusions.
Like, and I've thought, yeah, but even if it's that.
His ate theirs. His ate theirs, and then they turn the water into blood.
Yeah. And that's as far as I got. So
like,
I don't know if they were able to match other plagues or miracles or whatever.
I think that was it.
Okay.
Because it gets to the point where they
can't anymore.
Yeah, right. Right? I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. I mean, I could probably tell you tomorrow because I'll get through some more tomorrow. But
it starts going into the locust. It starts bringing in all the things, on the plagues.
And the one thing that I thought was interesting too was like I saw a notation in my Bible that referenced, like, you know, it footnoted it, and so I looked at the bottom of the page and it referenced like some chapter verse, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, in Numbers. I flipped over there and I read it, and it was talking about how God was judging the Egyptian gods. Like, that's what he was doing. Like, they were worshiping all these, you know, polytheistic type system of worship that they had, and that he was judging their gods. And then I was like, okay, now my wheels started going like, all right. And this is kind of my opinion of it, and I can't necessarily really just rattle off scriptural support off the top of my head. I have to unpack some of this. But God is called the Most High what? The Most High
The Most High
God.
God, yeah.
Why is he the Most High God if there's not other gods? Now, in that question, the context behind it would be that he created them
Mm-hmm.
and that they were good at some point in time and then did not become good. But he's called
Even God's in like maybe even a different sense than him, because he is. Remember, Isaiah talks about, I am the first and the last. Apart from me, there is no other.
for sure. He stands alone as distinct and as supreme,
Yahweh God.
almighty,
Yeah.
like the head honcho, the Most High.
Yeah.
I believe that. But I
But
also
divine
believe,
creatures, maybe Elohim type.
correct, that he created
Right.
Lucifer, we know, and
Right.
Lucifer was pretty amazing before he wasn't.
And he's called the God of this world.
Right.
Reference to.
Right.
Of,
So what if there were these gods that they worship? Like, you see this God worship in the Old Testament, and I think a lot of times we, and I'm sure that there are people out there that can school me 6 ways from Sunday on this. So I say this with all humility, but I feel like kind of treat the thought process of those people as very primitive.
mm-hmm.
There's some arrogance behind our thought process a lot of times when it comes to these people in the way that they would worship these quote false gods, especially in the Old Testament. I know in the New Testament there's more detail with Paul where he talks about worshiping things made by human hands, and like inanimate object kind of thing. It's okay, that's pretty clear. But like these gods where the Old Testament, they had names, and they would kill their children for them. I mean, they would go through these drastic, crazy things for their quote gods, and God was very, very jealous a lot in the Old Testament for his people, and he did not like it when they would worship other gods. Now, if they were just worshiping these fake inanimate things, would God have shown such passion towards it? Maybe, but yeah. I don't know. I'm sitting here making the argument that there was something more going on there, that these wise men, that these magicians, like what if they were, I don't know how to say it without saying, like, I don't want to totally go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs over here, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's something else there that I feel like I just unfortunately haven't heard people that have way more knowledge. I mean, I know that you spent a lot of time, studying and in seminary. How many times did y'all talk about stuff like this?
Right. No.
I mean, so I guess to kind of like summarize and conclude my thought process, my open-ended question is, first, is it possible that whatever's going on could be replicated today if we understood the technology that was being used? If, part B, you believe that there was some sort of technology going on there that we just don't understand. If we're going to go, let's just go right in.
Yeah. Man, I just still want to just say it was magic.
Well, that's easy. It's easy to say it's magic.
But because it almost is just like how they were doing it, what was going on at the time, I don't know. I don't know how, like, even because one of the commands in Deuteronomy, Moses is writing to the people of Israel as they're crossing into the promised land, and he's telling them, like, look, don't have anything to do with their sorcerers, their magicians, don't have anything to do with their, like all the things that we might say are, like you said, cuckoo. Like, he's not saying, he doesn't say those things aren't real. He's saying, don't go there. Don't do
You
that.
and I have talked about that before.
Yeah, remember
Divination.
1 Samuel 28 when they call
necromancy.
up. Yeah, they call up Samuel, and like I think legitimately that happened.
Yeah.
Like, whatever you want to call it, he was called up, dude, from Sheol.
Yeah.
And so whatever was happening at the moment, I can stuff like that be replicated today? I don't really know. I've never seen that, I wouldn't expect to, But whatever it was, God was allowing it all to take place. Because again, we got to remember, he is while Pharaoh's in the process of hardening his own heart, God's also in the process of hardening Pharaoh's heart, right? Like Pharaoh hardened his heart against God. God hardened Pharaoh's heart. You know what I'm saying? And so he's almost like, why did he even let him do that in any way? You know what I'm saying? Because
sure, did he have a choice?
Yeah, like why did God let? It was almost like, because remember Pharaoh's like, at first it almost seemed like, whoa, how's he? My magicians can do that too. See, you're not, and it was like a hardening almost. It was like, you're not anything special. So it was almost like the Lord was allowing all that to be used. I don't know what was, but I do tend to think that, now we've talked about this a million times, and so for us this is repetitive a little bit, but I do believe that there was, in the theory kind of the technological advances before the flood. Like there's no way of knowing what exactly, how far, the theory says that they were more advanced even than we are today.
100%, yeah.
Before the flood.
Yeah.
They had literal divine creatures intermingled in our world.
Right.
And I just believe that's what Scripture teaches,
Me too.
So people don't press into that a lot, and there's a lot of theories, and it's hard to, I think for me, where you love pressing into these questions. For me, sometimes I think it would drive me crazy because I wouldn't be able to get the answer that I really want, because I'm like, I don't know that I can find it biblically. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
It does. It makes 100% sense. And the way that I approach it, and it sounds kind of arrogant, and I don't mean it to sound like that. It's just I'm naturally positive, and I kind of think I know the answer, and I'm trying to figure out how to explain it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because with the caveat, that could always be wrong. I've eaten so much crow, I've kind of begun to like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But there is a worshipful component to that, in that, hey, look, God, I just want to know the truth. I think that it's your pleasure to reveal it. Mm-hmm. If you know that I just want to know it, and I only want to know it because I want to know more of who you are.
Right.
And hey, listen, if I'm wrong, show me, and I will gladly yield.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
All I want to know is the truth. That's it. And I don't want to be going around causing harm to the kingdom, because some people, you don't come right out and you start talking about a lot of this stuff with a new Christian, because you're gonna lose them, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just I enjoy talking about these things with mature Christians and making them squirm, because most of them have never thought about this.
Yeah.
But it's fun when I see the light bulb go off, where it's like, I don't know, maybe, but I think it makes God more real. It makes him more real to me. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a being that like created all this. Like, how do you think of that being? Now, I know that we would think of him as Jesus, right? Like, if Jesus is the exact imprint of his nature, and if you've seen the face of Jesus, you've seen the face of the Father. So there are some scriptural things that suggest that, hey, he has totally made him physically revealed himself to us.
Yeah.
But these kind of things, in my experience, whenever I feel like I can connect a dot, whether it's the fallen angel problem in Genesis chapter 6, explaining a whole lot more about like sort of the origins of the flood. Well, now that makes a lot more sense to me. Mm-hmm. I feel like I know you more. I feel like I know your motives more, and and I'm drawn to that, because I think, at least for me, a lot of times I've got the tendency to ask the question, like, how do we know you're good?
Mm-hmm.
You do whatever you wanted. Like, why did
Yeah.
you create hell? Like, what?
Right. Right.
There's just some tough questions. And then it's like I remind myself, the more I learn about him, it's like, no, okay, you are good. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to know the answer to every question,
Right.
but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to pursue an answer.
Because it does seem like a lot of the things we've talked about, like, do give more reasons behind some of the things that people say. Like the genocides that we see
Right.
in the early parts of
Right.
go kill the women,
Right.
devote them to destruction,
And the
women,
animals.
children, animal, everything. Yeah. It's like, well, because there was pervasive evil seed that had
Correct.
spread.
It was a genetic corruption.
Right.
Like
right.
genetic, scientific.
So in a sense, it was like a purification
Correct.
process, purifying the earth.
Right.
Of ridding the earth of this seed.
And we learn that there's going to be enmity between that seed all the way back in chapter 3 of Genesis.
Yeah.
And I know that there are some wackos out there that have developed these racist type theories about what that is, and like serpent seed. And I've read some things, and I'm just kind of like, how as a Christian can you buy into that? Like, come on. We're not talking about that.
Right.
We're talking about what it says.
Yeah.
And then the outcome of, there is some kind of enmity there, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I just think that when you start having more pieces to the puzzle, you see the picture more clearly. And I think a lot of times we Christians, and I'm not saying that this is all the way wrong, okay? So I'm not trying to be emphatic and go one extreme to the other. I'm just saying a lot of times I feel like we take the lazy road because we don't want to spend time thinking through these things, because there's in our minds more important things to wrestle with.
Yeah.
More important things to do for the kingdom. So I think a lot of times it comes from a good place.
Yeah.
For most Christians, it's like, look, dude, I ain't worried about what the magicians were doing in Exodus. I'm trying to go tell people about Jesus out here.
Right.
Got you, man.
Yeah.
I got you. I'm not arguing that it should carry a higher priority than that. But what I'm saying is, hey, when me and you get together and you're not doing that, and we're talking,
Yeah.
and I know that you are seasoned and you're mature,
Mm-hmm.
can you just humor me, man, and like talk? I don't have anybody to talk to this stuff with, and
Right.
you know the word, and I want to unpack some of it with you because it's fun.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And it's crazy, bro. We're talking about the Creator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
Do you ever just like look at your hands and just think about just the human body and just how crazy it is? Like just to be able to exist in a body like this,
yeah,
and how and this is where I'm going to be opinionated, and I'm sure that there are really smart secular scientists that could kill me in an argument about something like this, but I can't imagine how you could think that something like this would just come to be eventually.
yeah,
Give it enough time. Give it enough time to bake in the microwave, and it pops out perfect.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Well, it's like we talk about, and almost even to wrap this all up, like the fact that because of our love for storylines in college football, storylines in the NBA and baseball and sports, storylines in film, we're part of this literal story that he's telling, and like you stop and you go, this is the story he's telling, and it's real, it's happening. I'm part of, like, we're so graced to be a part of it, to be brought into it. Like, we have the truth that makes this all, even if in part, makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So, like, that to me is fascinating. That is like, man.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about this morning. I was in John 19, and something that struck me when Pilate is talking to Jesus, they've got him, he's about to get him He's trying to like really understand. I really do think Pilate had like okay, they're saying this. Tell me, just reason with me here, dude. He's like, you do know I can crucify you, right? Like, tell me the truth. Are you the king of the Jews? And he's like, you know I can crucify you. And Jesus is like, yeah, and that's only because of the authority given to you from on high, from my Father.
Yeah.
You have no authority over me but what's been given to you. You know what I'm saying? and the text says, it was at that moment Pilate began to truly try to get this man released.
Right. He was afraid.
Yeah, he's like, okay, hold on,
Yeah.
dude. This dude's playing chess.
Well,
we're all out here playing checkers. Like he's referred to an even higher. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think Pilate knew at that moment. Like, hold up, something is different. I don't want his blood on my hands. And so he sought to release him. You know, and I just thought, man, even Pilate himself is wrapped up in this story that the Lord's telling, and it's all being orchestrated in such a way as to bring the Lord glory and for the good, you know, as Scripture tells us, for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purposes. So it's just, man, it's fascinating.
It really is, man. It really is, and that particular episode or circumstance is amazing. Just to hear you talk about it, I'm thinking, you know, we've talked to people who have authority about a subject matter, and you listen to them talk about it, and you know that they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Like they're bold, they have confidence. Imagine what Pilate must have been thinking when he got all of those things wrapped up in that comment.
Yeah.
You know, he was like, uh-oh, like, I don't know, like, and then you've got truth manifest, and so whatever he's saying has to resonate as truth.
Yeah.
We have to hear it as truth. And
I just
I'd be trying to figure out how to get out of that too, bro.
Yeah. Instantly, he's just like, oh my goodness, dude. There's something else that he says there. I can't remember now what it was. I thought about it this morning, but anyway, yeah, that was just I love that. Kind of gave me a little pause this morning.
Jesus says something about, I think.
Oh yeah,
dispatching his
Oh yeah, that's in that may be in John. I think that's in John. But what he also says, so actually, greater is the sin of those who handed me over to you.
Oh yeah.
You only have the authority that's been given to you from on high. So actually their sin is greater because they handed me into your hands. You know, and it was at that moment, Pilate, you know, I forgot he said that.
Because you know that he knows that that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody that can reason within logic.
Yeah.
And what's that unlocks a million other questions in my book. Like, there are degrees of sin. Like, guess what, everybody? Turns out all sin's not the same.
Right.
I know we love to try to sit here and say, you know, all sin is a sin. It's like, no, turns out that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
But, you know, I could talk about this stuff all night, man. But moral of the story is, you think they were magicians.
As he chuckles. I love it.
And
I do. I think it was magic.
Yeah. And I think it was technology.
Yeah.
So we can agree to disagree.
Perfectly.
And now you've given me something to supplement the weird Exodus things with in John, because I'm going to start digging into some of that, because I've forgotten about that back and forth between Jesus and Pilate. And isn't there also some area in the New Testament where it mentions that Pilate's wife had visions of who Jesus was?
Had nothing to do with this man, for I had a dream about him.
So you know that they were behind the scenes talking about it.
Yep. I think he's getting all sorts of signs.
Yeah.
Don't mess with this dude.
Yeah.
And the Lord just, like a lamb, led to the slaughter.
It's crazy, dude.
Because he does I think it's John. I'm trying to remember which gospel. It might have been. I'm pretty sure it's John, because he says, you know, are you the king? And, you know, basically he's like, where are your people then? Why aren't they fighting for you? You said I have. You say I am.
Yeah.
He's like, well, then where are your people? And he's like, well, my kingdom's not of this world.
Right.
Don't you know that my Father could send to me legions of angels?
Yeah.
But my
and
kingdom's
doesn't he?
not of this world.
This is me kind of speculating here. Well, maybe speculating is not the right word. I'm trying to remember correctly the word used, the Greek word used when he says that for my kingdom is not of this world.
Mm-hmm.
I believe is cosmos.
I don't remember. I'm not sure which one.
We have to look that up. Maybe we can file that as a takeaway. But
which almost always John uses the same exact word in like 5 different ways, though. Even though it is cosmos, I think, right? I think cosmos is always the word that he uses, but using the context and the way that it's spelled in the Greek shows you what is he talking about, like the world system of flesh? Mm-hmm. Is he talking about literally the cosmos, the universe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. I think the way that I always at least wanted to interpret it is he's talking about like the universe. Like my kingdom is not even of this universe, dude.
Yeah.
Much less this world.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm wrong. I'll look into it. But that's a really cool dialogue. There's a sadness to it. But
I always feel really
joy.
Anytime I finish a gospel, reading through an account, getting through those chapters and all of them, there is a like, gosh, dude, it just lands on you a little differently.
Yeah,
the way it's always explained in each one of them in their own way. It's just like, goodness grief, man.
Yep.
The Son of God. I remember one time it really landed on me in 1 Peter. I think it's chapter 4, beginning of 5. He says, for Christ who died once for sins, was nailed to a tree, died once for sins, and it just kind of made me stop, and it was like, why did he? Yeah. Why did he die for sins?
Yeah, I know.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that is the most unjust, the most wretched sin in all the world, was nailing the perfect, spotless Lamb of God to a tree, which cursed is anyone who's hung from a tree, right? We learn in the Old Testament. Like, why did he get nailed to the tree? And it makes me think of one of my favorite preachers ever, Charles Spurgeon, 1800s. It says, we look to the cross. We look to the cross and we despise our sin because our sin hung the beloved there. Mm-hmm. Our sin pinned him there. That's why, and so that just like, I don't know, man, it should cause us to stop and meditate upon that and think about it. Like, we get so caught up in our world, but, we talk about stories and loving stories. Again, this is the greatest one ever. That's why there's so many retellings of it, right? We talk about that. The resurrection accounts, the Messiah type figure that comes, the chosen one, you name it, and all these stories that we love, redemption stories. It's always going to have some sort of element of the good story, the one that's true,
the OG,
good, and beautiful.
The OG.
And so that's sort of our aim, right? That we would, if we're wrapping up here, be our aim for this podcast or whatever this ends up being down the road, is to love story and talk about that and weave them all back to the like you said, the original, the best of them all. Well, you got anything else for the
That was fun, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even know, like, has this been 20 minutes or has it been like an hour or two?
I think it's been a couple hours, hour and a half at least. Yeah.
Well, thank y'all for hanging around. If you did, I almost said like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. But we've got nothing like that. We are straight up just winging this. So anyway, good times. Go with the Lord in all you do, and go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Go
God
Braves.
bless. edit that last part out.
Yeah, we will.
Because I gave it a really dorky thumbs up.
Yeah.
And